Welcome to the Clear the Shelf podcast with Chris and Chris, the show that meets at the intersection of education and entertainment to discuss online arbitrage, retail arbitrage, wholesale, and all facets of selling on Amazon. We'll bring you news, tactics, strategies, insights, stories, and interviews to help you grow your Amazon business. And now, here are your hosts, Chris Grant and Chris Rasick. What's going on, everybody, and welcome back to the Clear the Shelf podcast with your hosts, Chris Grant, that is myself, and Chris Rasick, who is here with me this week. Chris, how's it going, man? How's your week been since we last recorded an episode?
It's going good. I got 2 weeks in a row, 2 podcasts in a row. Got new swag. Did you see that?
Heck yeah, that's a good looking shirt.
It is a good looking shirt. I got for the podcast listeners that aren't watching on YouTube. I've got my OA Challenge T-shirt, which if you missed the link to get one, there's one floating around. We could probably provide that for you. But you know what? I've actually had shirts made before, and these Heather ones, the 50/50 poly cotton blends, legitimately a really comfortable shirt. They're super soft, light. I mean, they're great shirts.
Yeah, I agree. Every time I order a shirt that is made by Amazon, I really try to make sure it's that one, because I don't know, it really is a good shirt. You know, it flows, it hangs nice. They picked a good shirt on that one. I don't know what brand it is because I always pull the tags out before I ever throw them on.
Yeah, tagless tees should be a requirement for all apparel moving forward.
Exactly. Well, I think we've got a great episode this week. We're going to be diving into time management as an Amazon seller, which, I mean, how many libraries full of books are on time management? I mean, it's got to be tens of thousands of books and words written on the subject, but I think we'll be able to throw our own flair on it. But before we get into that, I did promise last week we'd start reading a review or two. And if you will take a moment after, of course, you like this video or wherever you're listening to this podcast, leave a review. We will, of course, give you a shout out once we get to your review and read it. But this week's review is from Brian H. And he says, awesome and timely information. Chris and Chris are both experts in OA and RA, and they aren't just influencers that you can find in many other forums. This podcast has already answered some of the ongoing questions that I had about Amazon. Can't wait for the next episode. Brian, I appreciate you leaving a review for us. Even if you did use the term expert loosely, we'll take it. And I appreciate the kind words. If you ever want to reach out, I'd be happy to send you a little thank you gift for leaving us a review. And if you do the same, drop us a review in your favorite podcast player, Apple, Google, Spotify, wherever it is. We'll get over there and we'll read some of those as well. And we appreciate each and every single one of those. Kind of gets us up back to the mic and wanting to bring a little bit more content your guys' way because we make sure we're hitting on the right notes. So thank you for that. And we should probably talk a little bit of news before we get into time management. Chris, you wrote this week's 5 Things Friday, or at least 95% of it. It was nautical themed and it was fantastic. And one of the articles that you mentioned is creepy as hell, to be quite honest. You know, I will admit I have downloaded, I think, definitely Samuel L. Jackson as a voice for Alexa. I want to say that Shaq was on there, and I may have downloaded his voice as well. And then I got bored of it and kind of moved on. But they're coming out with a new feature where you can let Alexa listen to a voice. It could be a recording or a live voice. And after about a minute, it will be able to replicate the voice really, really well. So I don't know, your grandma who is no longer with us, you could share her voice with Alexa. You know, heck, I don't know who else you might think about using. Maybe your dad or your brother or whoever. But then Alexa can speak to you in their voice, and I don't know how I feel about this. Number one, I don't know. Every now and again, technology screws up. And it wasn't that long ago that the Alexa that my wife keeps in our bedroom so that she can see the time and she can, how women are at bedtime, guys are like, I love you, honey. Good night. We roll over and we're snoring. But my wife, I would imagine, like a lot of other wives and ladies out there, lay in bed and their mind just continues turning over and over and over again. So for her, it's a great thing. She can be like, hey, add, whatever to our shopping list, or, remind me of this appointment. And it's great. But about 3 o'clock in the morning, maybe 2 weeks ago, Alexa decided to start speaking in the middle of the night. And that was an uncomfortable thing to wake up to. It would be even worse if it were a dead relative's voice. I'm not sure how I'd handle that. I'm not sure how I'd handle that. And so I'm really curious what Amazon engineers were thinking, who decided to greenlight this project, and what they thought people were going to use this for, other than scaring the living daylights out of their children and family members.
Right. I mean, the presentation that they did in Vegas, now that was cute. You have a little child that says, hey, can grandma finish reading The Wizard of Oz to me? And grandma is in this scenario, grandma's passed away. And so Alexa changes her voice and reads the story to her granddaughter. That's cute. Not cute enough to override how creepy this is. Now, if like eventually when it gets to the point where AI gets really, really smart, like, and if it could actually take on some of the sayings of dead relatives, then I might be on board. Like if I asked Alexa what the weather was, and it was my dearly beloved now passed away grandmother that told me it's colder than a witch's tit out there. I mean, sign me up. That's good stuff there. But if it's just, I don't, yeah, there's too many creepy instances that what I might do is I might try to get like an audio clip of, I think if I had my choice, I might pick like Neil Gaiman's voice.
Oh, I like that.
Like if it could just, maybe that's something I would use it for, just give a minute of like his audible readings or something like that. Cause I could listen to him talk all day long, but yeah, the relatives, that's dicey.
Yeah. I definitely wouldn't mind hearing maybe some voices of the past, who I would love to hear is, and of course I'm going to forget his name, but the Prime Minister of Great Britain during World War II. Churchill. I wouldn't mind hearing Churchill speak to me. I guess tell me what the weather is. News of the day might be a little bit more apropos for his voice. But yeah, I don't know. I wouldn't mind hearing my grandfather tell me he's busier than a one-armed paper hanger, which was one of his. One of his. He had some other sayings for it being so hot outside, but I'm not really sure if I can share those publicly. There was a little bit of other news too. You shared something that I mean, CNBC just took it from us without any. There was no respect. They didn't put our name on it or anything
didn't
like
reach
that.
Out.
No, I mean, not a hey, thanks for talking about this and letting us run with it. But they talked about. Sorry, and I'm going to of course lose my
Revlon,
my train of thought here. But yeah, the Revlon bankruptcy filing and how it's probably going to spread a bit. I don't know. This kind of excites me because I smell I mean, I smell blood in the water. I smell opportunity. I smell a way for us to be able to leverage the unfortunate things that will happen. If this recession that everyone is prognosticating comes to fruition. Uh, and I don't know. I guess I'm curious to see who it happens to first. Is it going to be these direct to consumer brands that have tried to stay away from Amazon as a platform and want to be really hard on Amazon sellers? Is it going to be some of the older brands? Revlon's been around for a long time. Uh, is it going to be these brands that just aren't in touch with the way that e-commerce and today's shopping culture works? I don't know. What do you think it will be?
I think one thing for sure is that if there is a snowball effect and it's company after company starts filing, I think each one it's going to be one of those things where it's like, oh, I should have guessed. It's going to make perfect sense after the fact. I think it's going to be the companies that have been slow to adapt. It's retail is just brick and mortar retail is tough, and there's multiple layers to why it's tough.
Hey guys, wanted to take a quick second and thank you for listening to the Clear the Shelf podcast. My magnanimous co-host Chris Rasick has put together a gift for you for being a listener. It's called the Monthly Goal Tracking Spreadsheet, and it's free. The spreadsheet will help you break down and track how much you've purchased, which should be a leading indicator of how much you will sell, and then you'll be able to track how much you've sold as well as your estimated monthly profit on a daily basis. This will all feed into the daily averages so you can ensure that you're on track to meet your goals each and every month. Grab it for free today over at cleartheshelf.com/goal-tracking. Thanks again for being a listener. Now back to the show.
Throw the pandemic in there. That was gas on the flame. Of a struggle that was already occurring prior to. I think direct to consumer brands are probably in a position of strength. They already have the middleman cut out. They're probably, if they're doing it right, they're probably running a little bit leaner than some of these other traditional setup companies. But I think they'll be okay. I think it's going to be, unfortunately, it's probably a lot of well-aged brands that just have been slow to see, which something that to me seems fairly obvious of the way things were moving. The evolution. It hasn't been happening behind the scenes. It's right in front of our eyes all the time.
Yeah,
I think it's going to be them. And which is probably a good thing for the opportunity that we're smelling already. Because if it's a bunch of well-established brands that have been around for decades, that's a name that people are going to know. That's going to be some well-established, trusted products that potentially could have their prices just slashed through a liquidation sale.
Yeah, I don't know. I know that nobody wants to have like an economic downturn. I get that. We want the good times to keep rolling. But I remember some of the things that happened during the last recession, and I'm a little bit smarter than I was, in 2008. And so I'm curious to see how it all plays out, because a lot of things happened in 2008. You had a lot of roll-ups. Blackstone picked up a bunch of brands and companies, for pennies on the dollar when they went through Chapter 11. And as I watch these roll-ups over time, it doesn't really seem like anybody does a really great job at it. Blackstone, the other, I'm trying to think of the other big kind of roll-ups that are out there. There's a ton of them. I think Citadel maybe, and a few others. And then, of course, we've seen it on the Amazon side as well. And what we're seeing on the Amazon side is, well, they're already starting to slow down because they can't run all these roll-up brands as well as, an owner-operator could. And so they're kind of pulling back. And I'm curious if this happens all over again. These companies that are poised with cash, do they start rolling up brands, or are they going to be victims of the market? Are they going to see all these brands that they have under their umbrella that they now need to slash and get rid of, dead weight on the books? And so I don't know. I'm interested to see how it goes, and I just think there's going to be a ton of opportunity, not only for us as Amazon sellers, but also people who actually maybe are good operators and want to pick up a brand on the cheap and kind of revive it. I guess it'd be like Ty Lopez. He picked up Radio Shack and Pier One and a few others with his business partners. How many more is he going to get? And I don't know. And people are going to make fun of him because like Radio Shack's doing NFTs and stuff. But yeah, it should be interesting. Now, I will have to say this: if anyone at CNBC is listening this time around, we would appreciate a link to the show if you take more of what we talk about and run with it. That's fairly common practice in the blogging and media world. So just a heads up. But we should probably delve into the time management topic. Time management is, like we said, it's there's a perennial bestseller on time management every single year. It is something that I would say not very many people would say that they're good at. And those people who say that they're good at it, I would almost bet that 50% or more are lying either to everyone else or at least themselves. And it's a struggle, if you're going from a job to selling on Amazon or owning your own business, you might be used to people telling you what to do, when to do it, how long to do it. And you've got all these expectations that are thrust upon you by the higher ups. And then all of a sudden, whether it's a side hustle or a full-time business, you've got no one other than maybe your spouse or partner telling you what to do, whether or not you even have to show up in pants when you want to work, and how much or how little you actually have to work. And then all of a sudden, you find that you're the chief cook and bottle washer. You are responsible for everything from making payroll if you have it, all the way down to making sure the toilets are cleaned. And it's tough. It's not an easy gig. And there's even a myth out there that I think, I think a lot of people want to have this work-life balance. I can have it all. I can do everything. And plainly, I think that's false. I think there's an ebb and a flow to it. I think that every now and again, you've got to pull 12, 16-hour days, and maybe you have to do that for a week. Maybe you have to do it for a month. Maybe you have to do it an entire Q4 if you want to knock your goals out of the park. But then sometimes every day can be a Saturday, like you like to call it. You can make sure that you stick your feet in the pool for an hour or two, or you hit the range or hang out with your kids or your family, and you've only got to work 10 hours a week because things are just, you're in the flow and everything's kind of going in the right direction. But I don't think that even if you are 100% at time management, that you're ever going to have this perfect work-life balance. And I think we, as entrepreneurs, we need to either accept that or realize that we're not going to necessarily get where we want to go. Things could be fine. You can put in 6 to 8 hours a day and things will be fine. You can have a business that runs, but it's not going to necessarily be exactly what you want, because there are going to be times when you just got to put in the time and keep your nose to the grindstone. And so I want to know your thoughts, like, what's important about time management, and I don't know, are there any myths out there that you think exist or anything like that?
Yeah, and it's something that I think about a lot. In fact, it was one of the very, very first questions that I reached out to you in a DM about. It was, if you're, for the part-time sellers that hope to one day be full-time Amazon sellers or full-time entrepreneurs and walk away from that 9 to 5 life, there's a romantic quality to it when you still have a W-2 position.
Mm-hmm.
And it's, it's romantic to think about all the time. It's romantic to think about how much time. It's romantic to think about doing whatever you want when you want.
It's, if I could cut in, it's really romantic to think about walking out of the office, flipping your boss the bird, and telling everyone where they can shove that job, right?
Yep. Yeah. Speaking of celebrity voices on smart speakers, there is actually a feature that you can kind of like, what's it called, Cameo, where you can hire a
Mm-hmm.
celebrity. You can actually have them give your resignation notice.
Oh, that's so awesome.
So that's another one that Sam Jackson might be good at, but depending on your opinion of your soon to be ex-employer. But there's a lot of there's a lot of pie in the sky and daydreaming to be done before you do it, and there's a little bit of the grass is always greener involved in this, because what happened to me was I quit my day job. I went full time, and I said, wow, I all of my time is my own now.
Mm-hmm.
And then it only took a little bit before I was sitting there going, my entire day is wide open. What the hell do I do now? It's like, yeah, I mean, there's something to be said about the structure, and I mean, at first I loved it. It's we've had an ongoing thing where it's hashtag forever Saturday, and it truly is great. But I think the one thing, if you don't really kind of analyze it and you don't really look at it honestly, there is still work involved, and there's a lot of work involved. So it was a challenge for me to try to build a structure from scratch. I'd never had to do that before. It requires discipline, and it requires a little bit more, maybe a little bit more effort than your daydreams kind of led you to believe. Not that it's not great. It's very happy with it, and but it's a challenge.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a walk in the park all the time. So I think there's a blurred line, or they run very close together. Time management and productivity.
Mm-hmm.
The better you are at one, the other is going to kind of ride the tide with you. And I mean, obviously it's best if they work together. But it's very, the two of them are tied together. So it's time management is, it's kind of similar to when, if you did have a day job and you were doing something 9 to 5, or you're working in an office like I was, where it's just a bunch of cubicles. There are people that will randomly come up to you when you're in the middle of something. There's constant distractions and meetings to pull you away, and
Mm-hmm.
that really doesn't change. If you have children like I do, I never realized how many snacks a 4-year-old requires until I quit my day job.
It's insane.
It is. I'm about to. I need to test her blood sugar or something. Like, I don't. How do you? Can I have a snack? Another one? How do you? That's all you've done.
I don't know how kids need to eat on the quarter hour consistently. It makes no sense.
Yeah, I do. Constant. I mean, the dishes. Like, we're gonna run out of silverware and dishes. Simply just the volume of the snacking that goes on. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, if you have dogs, the dogs need to go out, and if if you're doing OA and you have dogs, they're going to go nuts every time that FedEx shows up, followed by UPS, followed by the mailman, and then sometimes UPS again. And yeah, there's there's challenges involved. This is a much more important topic than maybe it appears on the surface.
Yeah, I would agree. Uh, and so I want to talk a little bit about this Harvard Business Review, and I will have to say this: if you do not pay for a Harvard Business Review subscription, I would highly suggest it. It's not super cheap. I want to say it's maybe $250 or $300 a year, but both the quality and the breadth of content that they offer is, I mean, it's second to none. And I mean, it's from Harvard, it's going to be good stuff. But they wrote an article about time management back in 2020, and there were 3 different skills that they say really help you when it comes to succeeding at time management. One is awareness, thinking realistically about your time and understanding that it's a limited resource. I think everybody understands how limited time is, but thinking realistically about how much time we have, I think, is a completely different subject. I can easily say that I have got no free time. However, I don't know, maybe once or twice a week, I will catch myself in a 3-hour binge marathon of some television show. And then afterwards, as I'm, mentally kicking myself, I realize, wow, I really just wasted 3 hours and I'm never going to get that time back. And I spent it on, trash TV. I mean, it's not like I was watching a documentary. I was watching Stranger Things or something worse.
You spent that time on the arts.
That's true. Now, one of the other skills you need to have is arrangement. So organizing your goals, your plans, your schedules, the tasks that need to be done. And then I think even further in that arrangement is there's urgent things and then there's important things. And sometimes urgent and important are the same thing, but not always, so can you knock those urgent things off the list? So if I'm bleeding, I need to urgently get to the ER. So if something in your business is bleeding, please urgently apply pressure to whatever that wound is. But then there's important things. Like, it's important that I go and get a checkup every year and make sure I'm as fit as I am going to be for the next year. And it's also important that you do a checkup on your business, whatever that is, whether it's financials or make sure you're looking at your P&L or, going through replens and making sure you've got adequate inventory. And on the flip side, maybe, you're making sure that you aren't overstocked and you're taking care of that if necessary. Those are important things, but they're not necessarily urgent. So they need to be put in a hierarchy a little bit differently. And then the third skill that they talked about was adaptation. So monitoring your use of time while performing activities. And that means adjusting to interruptions or changing priorities because your priorities will change. Something urgent can pop up. There's always going to be a fire here and there that needs to be handled quickly. And some of the other important things can fall down the list a little bit. So I guess those people who are not able to, if they have to stick to a schedule, and if anything changes, that just sends them into a spiral for the whole day. You need to work on that to make sure that you can adapt. It's important. Now, what I found interesting and something that I think you and I have talked about a little bit is when you are working on awareness as a skill, you need to find your peak performance time. And I know that yours is you're a night owl.
Absolutely.
And it's not right or wrong, but that about yourself. I am naturally a night owl. but just due to the way that, home life works, I don't necessarily get to be a night owl. I've got to be up, at 6 or 7 or whatever it is. And so I've sort of trained myself to come back a little bit. But what I've found is that if I have to get up at 6 or 7, my kind of peak time for working is probably 1 o'clock to 3 p.m. or so. And so it's important to kind of find your own peak time. I know that some writers, their peak time is, 5 or 6 o'clock in the morning when it's quiet, when there are no interruptions. And that's when they get really good writing done. The other thing about awareness is treat your time like it's money. A lot of people will create a budget and they've got, every single month, 3% goes to this account and 5% goes to this account. But we don't ever create a budget for our time, which when I read this, I was like, holy crap, that's really freaking smart. And I don't know why I haven't done this before. But if you need to give 10% of your time to, I don't know, one particular thing every single day, or maybe your family gets 25% of your day or whatever it is, but creating a budget and then trying to stick to it can be something that makes your life a little bit easier. Evaluating how realistically you actually assess your time. I would say this is something we're probably all really, really bad at. How long does it actually take you to finish a project? Or how long does it take you to do online arbitrage? Can you really pack up a 500 unit shipment in an hour and a half like you say you do on Instagram? Or has it really taken you 8 hours, but you feel like it's only been an hour and a half?
We're on day 3 of that 500 parcel shipment.
Exactly. And then avoid the sunk cost fallacy. This is not only when you're talking about inventory, but you think you might be spending too much time on an activity. Well, you could step back and you say, well, how important is this really? And if it's something that is not really that important, it's not going to move your goals forward, then maybe think about saying, okay, let's toss this in the wastebasket and let's move on to something that is actually important in our business. I don't have any examples right off the top of my head, but I'm sure there's plenty of things that probably fall under this category that we do either out of habit, maybe a little bit of guilt of, we've got to get this done, and things like that. But I'm sure I could probably carve out 3 or 4 things that I do on a regular basis that don't need to be there anymore.
Well, that's anybody that's made a list and tried to prioritize, which is important. That's another important part of, actually being realistic, about your evaluation, and your time assessment, is you need to know realistically how long does it take to do this task, all of your tasks. If we're being perfectly honest, actually auditing the time that you spend. I can't tell you how many articles I've read that have one of the steps being a journal, where you basically log everything that you do and the time that it takes you to do it for like an entire week when you first start out. There's a bunch of different time management systems that have that aspect to it.
Mm-hmm.
But anybody that I've even heard people advocating for doing easy tasks first.
Mm-hmm.
Because the concept is to actually cross off certain tasks, and they think there's a momentum and a positivity attached to that part of it. And then
get a little dopamine hit.
Right, exactly. And then there are other people who, Mark Twain, if eat the first thing you do if you have to eat a frog is get it done first thing in the morning. Get your most difficult task out of the way right away. So it's interesting, and through that Harvard Business Review and those principles that they're talking about, you can see so many different systems that we've read about just intertwined. Like as you were talking, I'm thinking about, okay, like you basically described the quadrant time management system, where you basically have 4 quadrants and you group them into important, urgent, both, and neither. I think that's an interesting one, and you would focus on quadrant 2, which is the important stuff, more so than like 4, the one that that's neither. But getting back to the feeling guilty, or trying to get stuff done. When I procrastinate, I go through that a lot. There are plenty of times where it gets into my late night, the quiet part of my day, the part of my day that I can concentrate the most. And some days I'm just not feeling it, and I'm kind of, I'm feeling my hashtag Forever Saturday, and I'm goofing around and screwing around, and then something clicks where it's like, okay, if I don't want to pull an all-nighter, I'm gonna have to go to bed soon. And then you kind of take stock of your day, and you go, yeah, I didn't really do anything. Like finishing second and fortnight doesn't count. So there are times where I just scramble just to get something done, because you want something, you want to be able to cross something off at the end of the day, because you're just being a schlub. So yeah, it's interesting that the systems, and especially in this setting, where we have so much control of so much of our day as Amazon sellers.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So the next thing that the Harvard Business Review talks about is like you need to develop some arrangement skills. So, and it's not necessarily about organizing your work to better control your life. It's more about taking control of your life and then structuring your work around it is what they say arrangement skills are all about. So they say you should prioritize activities and obligations. And we've talked about this, not enough to just write out your tasks and your to-do list and your meetings, but prioritize them. And one thing I would add to this that they did not talk about is, do you ever? So I write, and I've shown the to-do list on screen before, but I like to write out my to-do list just on a blank sheet of paper every day. But you ever have those things that stay there for like 3, 4, 8 weeks? Those things that just keep going on to the next one, man, you just gotta get those out of there. You're not going to do them. They're obviously not that important, or some fire would have popped up because of them. So it's time to just cut those off the list.
Yeah, I've got some Post-it notes that I'm surprised haven't popped roots again.
They've got dust
and they
on
become
there.
Yeah, you can't. They're falling off because the adhesive has eroded away, and those become invisible anyway. It's and it's probably a good exercise to rewrite it anyway if it truly is something that is not urgent, obviously, but it's something that you want to get done. It would help to actually write it back out. That makes it fresh. There's that connection where you actually, if you write it again, it'll kind of solidify in your brain a little bit more.
Yeah, and you're right. Those tasks that seem to just pile up, they really kind of are invisible, but I still think that they take up some shelf space in your mind. Which may cause you not to think as clearly, and oh, well, I want to get this done, but I've got these things that I need to do. And then it kind of takes you away from working on those urgent and important tasks, and then back into thinking, oh, well, I've got these 5 things that I've got to do. And, you worry about them and think about them. It's just a waste of time.
Yeah. And you certainly don't want a reminder that you didn't accomplish as much as you thought your future self was going to. There's actually a negative connotation to that. If it's staring at you on the face, it could create guilt, if you're taking a well-deserved break, which
Hmm.
a lot of the research now coming out is, you know, there's kind of a backlash or a reversal on the overworking, and the super hustle. We're kind of, a lot of the stuff coming out is taking a step back and saying, you know what, you're actually far more productive if you take frequent breaks.
Hmm.
So you certainly don't want a dusty post-it note or a crumpled up to-do list that's been sitting there for too long to make you feel guilty,
Hmm.
because you need you need the mental health, just part of it, to just check out for a minute, because it's ultimately going to create better work when you get back to it.
Yeah, I wanna circle back to this hustle porn thing, because it is, I don't know. I think it's a little bit toxic, and I guess when it first started, and it kind of became, hashtag hustle was, everywhere. I think that I really bought into it, but maybe now as I've gotten a little bit older and a little bit wiser, I realized it's kind of garbage, and so I want to come back to that here in a moment. But one of the other things that Harvard talked about when you arrange things is to schedule protected time, and I think this. I mean, honestly, I know that you and I have probably read one or two time management books, together, and scheduling protected time is in every single one of them. Dan Kennedy probably takes it a little too far. I know we've read his, and he's a different kind of fella. But I think scheduling protected time where you're either focusing on some actual work, or you're having some thinking time, you're working on your most important projects. Though that scheduled time is important, uh, and put it in your calendar. It's something I do. This podcast is in our family calendar, and everything I do gets put in our family calendar. And if I need time just to work on something, maybe I'm putting together, I don't know. I recently had to write a suspension, and so not for myself, but I had to put in the calendar the 90 minutes or so that I knew it would take me, so that I could say, okay, I'm going into the office, I'm working on this at this time. And it's not only good for you to know that, although I think that's probably a big part of it, but it's also good for whoever else is in your life to be like, oh, okay, this is when, dad is working. Uh, and then the other thing is that I think sometimes we try to bite off a little bit more than we can chew. And Harvard says to try half-sized goals. But I said this to someone the other day. I don't. It's not my favorite quote, but what's the only way to eat an elephant? One bite at a time. And I think that especially in Amazon, I'll see people who just get started, or maybe they've been at this for 2 or 3 months, and all of a sudden they're like, "Hey, who in here is selling $1 million on Amazon?" Or, I saw someone recently say, "Hey, how many 8-figure sellers do you know?" I, I mean, it doesn't matter. You're not there yet, so there's not really a reason to go after those 8-figure goals until we get to the 5-figure goals, and we've knocked down the 6-figure goals and things like that.
Right.
So yeah, I think it's okay to reframe your goal so that it's maybe a little bit outside your comfort zone, but it's achievable. And then once you can hit that goal and you get that dopamine hit, then it's time to stretch a little bit further.
Yeah. I like the concept of even to-do lists. I like the
Hmm.
concept of making very short to-do lists, with only like 3 bullets on it,
Hmm.
because there is that dopamine hit. There is a sense of accomplishment when you get those 3 done, and you can still do more than that. But, a to-do list that has 25 things that you will never, ever get to, and 17 of them are going to be flipped on to the next day, that's not doing you any good. You know, and it's a feeling of negativity. It's a feeling of not being productive enough that you don't need. You know, you don't have to carry that.
Yeah, we've talked about dopamine hits 3 or 4 times now, and I'm sure it's covered a lot. There's so many time management books I have not read, although I would argue that they're more or less 80% the same thing in different words.
Sure.
But a lot of times we talk about engineering your space, engineering the area you work in to make sure it's suitable for work. It's going to help you towards your goals. I think that we could use dopamine hits in a good way. You hear a lot of it. Deep Work, Cal Newport talks about how social media uses those dopamine hits to keep you hooked. Well, you can use dopamine for good too. It doesn't have to be just scrolling TikTok. It can be marking something off your to-do list and really priming your environment to get the next thing done. And since we're talking about people who are smarter than us, the next thing Harvard said is as you try to build your adaptation skills, you should try habit stacking. Of course, I know both of us are fanboys of James Clear, and habit stacking is pretty high up on his list of things to do. So if you're not familiar with what habit stacking is, it's just taking something you already do and just putting something right on top of it. So for example, let's say that you want to, I don't know, you want to do daily affirmations. We'll get a little woo-woo here in this example, but you want to do daily affirmations. I am healthy. I am wealthy. I am, extremely handsome. Well, you could stack that habit on top of, say, brushing your teeth. And so while I brush my teeth, I'm going to be saying these daily affirmations over in my head. That way I'm doing 2 things at once, and it's okay to multitask that way. Matter of fact, later on in this Harvard Business Review article, they actually talk about multitasking not being such a bad thing, which kind of made me feel a little bit better. But the other things you can do with habit stacking is maybe if you want to track your daily progress, well, do that while you're eating lunch or, maybe eating dinner or whatever it is. But try to put as many things on top of each other as you possibly can. One of the other things they talk about is using some short bursts of effort, which this goes right back to the Pomodoro technique. You work for 25 minutes, you take 5 minutes off. I don't know. Do you do that regularly? Are you a fan of short bursts of effort?
Yeah, informally though.
Okay.
I know there was a study that was done. Did you read the one that actually said they narrowed down the perfect amount of time to work?
Yes, I did.
52 minutes working and then a 17-minute break. I'd probably maybe I have those numbers flipped in my personal output. Maybe 17 minutes of work and then I take about 52 minutes off. It might be part of my problem. but I've always been. I just kind of naturally need to reset, and it goes back. I had my old boss going back 20 years ago. He had back when I was writing loans when I was a loan officer at a mortgage broker. He would most of the time in the classic sense of the commission only loan officer, it's a bunch of cold calling, and it's volume. You're just constantly pumping the phone. So he would have this thing where if he got in a rut or there were too many bad calls, he would stand up and like walk around his chair and sit back down, or sometimes he even said he would hang a picture upside down in his office and then sit back down and work, so it was, and obviously there's no, that's not going to make the Harvard Business Review, but
no.
But I do like the concept of just getting up and changing rooms or walking, not getting my 4-year-old a snack. That doesn't count, but just something, just being mindful that you're stepping away from the computer, or you're stepping away from, your prep scale, or, whatever it may be. I don't do it on a set schedule, but I'm always aware of it. I just kind of, I like that. I like to be able to refresh it, just short little breaks, and then you can get back to it. I find the exchange rate for, the how fresh I feel when I sit back down is definitely worth it. It only takes a couple minutes to really, kind of give me a little boost that I might need.
Absolutely. I don't I don't think that I probably don't measure it quite enough, but I do the exact same thing. I would say once every hour or maybe even 90 minutes, I'll take the dogs out. And I like to go outside. I like to get a little bit of sunshine. I'm stuck under, interior lights all the time and in front of a screen. And so I like to go just step out into the sunshine, enjoy it for 10 or 15 minutes. And then it really is amazing how a couple of things happen. Number one, changing your location can often trigger an idea. That's been proven through a lot of different studies. And so I think it kind of clears your mind and even offers the opportunity for things to just come to you. But two, you also just get to take a break. So what I do is I'll go in the backyard, I get some sunshine, and then while my dog is running around the yard, I will walk around the patio area. And there's and the reason I do that is with the number of smart people who have said that walking was the most important thing that they did. And I mean, this is everybody from Marcus Aurelius to now the author you mentioned earlier,
Mark Twain.
Mark Twain. There's all kinds of people who have said walking was some of the most important things that they ever did in their life. I don't know if it's helped me any or made me any smarter, but if they can do it, it's good enough for me. Now, a couple other things that Harvard brings up before we move on to anything else. They said, don't be a reminder miser. And so what they mean by this is actually, if you are putting reminders or making that to-do list or anything like that, kind of go into detail. And this is something I'm not really great at. I'll write myself 2 or 3 words, and I expect myself to remember that. But they talk about really putting down like step-by-step instructions or a detailed description of what you should do. And this does a couple of things. Number one, it will kind of clear that shelf where that sits in your mind. And if you're a person who, stays up late at night thinking of all the things you've got to do the next day, this really should declutter the brain a bit. And then the last thing, which Chris has already touched on, is reduce time wasters. Now, he can't kick his kids out of the house, so he's out of luck. But trying to create some do not disturb times can be really, really important. Maybe if you have to, block social media. There's plenty of apps for that, both on your computer and on your phone. Leave your phone in the other room. I know for me, it's a huge deal. I'm a habitual, heck, I feel my phone vibrating in my pocket right now, and it's on my desk, and so, right. And I know lots of people are like that. It vibrates, it rings, you want to pick it up. So, get that out of the way. And if you can, with kids, with dogs, with family members, let them know that there are some times where you just have to not be disturbed. And I used to think that this was a selfish thing for me to do, closing the office door and saying, I cannot be disturbed right now. But in reality, it allows you to focus on your family or your friends or whoever it might be when you are away from the office. And things are not in the back of your mind and, I've got to get this done, I've got to get that done, and things like that. Perfect example, today my family and I went out and had some family time. I didn't pick up my phone once, and I didn't feel bad about it. And it was incredible. I think that today we probably made some memories that will last a lifetime. Some great summer memories out on the lake, and I was only able to do that because I'm also willing to say, you know what? Well, right now, Dad can't be disturbed. He's got to get things done. And so there's this, there's back and forth that you have to play.
Yeah. Yeah. I it's funny. I always have this thing that runs through my head, this narrative. That's like, what if I did have a day job, like I wouldn't be here right now. I mean, it's, usually it's that thought is born out of frustration, but I wonder how many self-employed people have rented offices and warehouses much, much earlier than they probably should have, just to have a location that wasn't their home.
Yeah. I have thought about it. It would be good for podcast recording. It would be good for, time to focus. I have not ever pulled the trigger on it, just because I think mostly out of guilt, but I would imagine that it would probably actually make me be more present while being at home. And maybe I'm just cheap. I don't know. I haven't decided yet.
Yeah. That's definitely my primary reason. Like, I don't want to add the expense. Like,
right.
Like
now,
I'm still trying to build this up.
And speaking of time wasters and interruptions, you put in our show notes today something interesting. I've heard this before, but it's a good reminder. So you put down that it takes an average of 23 minutes to regain the level of concentration and thought you were previously at after being distracted. That is mind-boggling,
isn't it? I'm
it is
blown away. But at the same time, you read it, and if you think, if you have an example of when it's happened to you, it's one of those things where you read it and you go, "That's unbelievable," but it has to be true.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I talk about it all the time. It's like just I've joked about, like family members that think now that I quit my job, I have all the time in the world, and they think they're free to come over and take 2 hours of it or call me and, keep me on the phone for 90 minutes. Cause I don't have anything. They think I'm retired or something, but
yep.
But yeah, absolutely. It happened. It happened when I was writing the email. I was in a groove and I think it's a different side of my brain. My writing side versus the listening to my father side, because he completely gets me out of whatever zone I'm in. And I'm teasing him because he'll never listen to this and kick my ass if he did. But it was tough. Like, it really took me a long time to get back into that frame of mind, because it's a thought process. It's a concentration level. It's it could be, your physical chair, it could be all this stuff, and I know for sure it happened. It was such a productivity killer when I was working the 9 to 5. Those people that just want to come over and they've decided it's their time to chit chat, regardless of, what I'd always try to furrow my brow, or they say, if you look busy, people are more likely to leave you alone. But it doesn't work on everybody, unfortunately. But it can take a while, especially if you're in a groove and being self-employed, like you mentioned at the top of the show, you're everything. You are every position in the company, so when you get your head into a certain slot and you're doing bookkeeping, you don't want to be writing ad copy or you can't be doing a blog post at that time, or whichever, pick whatever function, they don't, the transition isn't quite as smooth, so if you get pulled away from it abruptly, it could take you a long time and it'll kill your productivity. It's so frustrating sometimes.
Absolutely. if I'm sitting down and I'm doing a sourcing session, and then I have to go and, I don't know, input all of that into inventory lab and make sure that, it's ready for a shipment when it gets here, I can't go back to sourcing. Sourcing for me can be a little bit zen. I can get into some deep work, and, you throw on a little bit of music and focus on it. And I mean, you can really get rolling. But then the minute I've got to go and turn on I don't know, the boring work of inputting it all into, Amazon, if you're using Send to Amazon or Inventory Lab, that absolutely just kills me. So
Yeah. Yeah, we do it to ourselves too. It's not even, it's not always external factors.
absolutely.
Think about it. If I'm prepping, if I'm working on a batch, and you kind of have your inventory in your head, But then there have been times, because I do a lot of it again late at night. There are certain times where I'll have a couple tabs open, and there's a coupon code expiring at 12 o'clock Pacific time, and it's 2:30 in the morning or something, and I go, oh crap, I gotta get that order in,
Mm-hmm.
because it's 20% off or something, and it's a legitimate discount, like it's going to go away in 30 minutes. So then so you jump over and you finish an order that I spaced out on earlier, and then you try to get back to prep, and it's a whole different department in my head. I mean, it's not as easy. I mean, it's not it's not devastating at the same time, but I've probably leaked a whole lot of that inventory that I had in my head, to where if something went bonkers, or, inventory, Amazon tells me they need an expiration date for a Cocoa Melon doll or something stupid like that, and I've got to change it, and it rearranges my boxes. All of a sudden, I can't recall off the top of my head what was in every single box. Now I got to dig through it. I've got to unpack it or something, and you're just, it's too much overlap, that non-productive overlap.
Exactly. So I talked about wanting to circle back to the hustle culture or hustle porn, whatever you want to call it, and maybe why that's a little bit toxic. And we should probably end the show with maybe some of the systems. I know we've talked about them a little bit, but we should probably give folks a couple of systems that they could do some more research on. But we've talked about, I don't know, if you go on Instagram, you go on I guess TikTok, things like that. And I'm not big into this whole the self-care movement. Okay, I'm not saying you should not do any self-care or anything like that, but maybe I'm just not comfortable with myself. Wanting to go and put some cucumbers over the eyes and things like that. But hustle porn has really become something that I think is really no good. Number one, it's not healthy. If you hustle and do nothing else, you're going to end up burning out. And I think that depending on how much you decide to hustle, the bigger and the more fiery the crash will be. And I don't know. I don't know if people who espouse that whole hustle culture really actually get more done. Because if you're always just hustling, are you actually taking time to step back and think about the direction that your business really should go? Or are you losing the forest for the trees? Are you seeing? I'm all kinds of cliches here, but are you looking out for what's around the corner and thinking about what may happen and how you might need to adapt, overcome, or react to certain situations that you may have been able to see had you just taken a breather for a moment, rather than being in the business all the time? And I don't know. I don't know how to get people out of that, because for a lot of folks, especially in the Amazon world, it is like, I've got to hustle 24/7, 365, or this all goes away. And I don't think that's necessarily the case. So I don't know. How do we I don't know, how do we free people from this? I guess is my question to you.
That's difficult, because the when you're self-employed, and you're doing everything that you do, you're hyper aware of the value of the tasks that you're doing. You've moved away from that punching a time clock and I just got to do this, because they told me to do it, and the square pegs go in the square holes and blah blah blah, and then punch out, and there's not really a need to know why you're doing what you're doing. It's not necessary in that environment. But then once you move to self-employment, you've taken away that, I'm putting in all this sweat and into this product, and I'm only getting X number of dollars per hour. But instead, when you're self-employed, it's all for you. You become hyper aware of what why you're doing what you're doing. The why is so prevalent because you only decide to do it because it needs done. So clearly the why. And there's such a concentrated value to everything that you do. None of it's meaningless when you're self-employed. Essentially, you may have some tasks that are lower value, but even those could be delegated eventually. But you know what I mean? Like you're working for yourself. There's no resentment. Like I'm doing all this, and my boss didn't give me a raise. There's none of that. So, and that's almost how I started this. I always had a second job for the longest time because I loved the idea that I could punch out at 5 from my day job, but then I could go, and instead of going out to dinner and spending money, I could then take a few more hours and make even more money. So I felt it almost had a compounding effect. I picked up the money that I wasn't spending, and then on top of that, I was making money. So I saw a whole lot of value in working longer. So that. And then once I moved into this space and became self-employed, I was almost predisposed to the hustle porn, and it's, I struggled for a long time figuring out when it was okay to stop, because I always had that thought that, anything recreational, it would creep into my head where it's like, okay, if instead of playing, hitting this bucket of balls, you could actually be making money, that compounding effect, it actually reversed. It became a negative and kind of made me feel guilty from spending time on hobbies and spending my time, just doing recreational stuff. So it can be tough, it's tough to turn it off. It's tough to decide because, the one thing with this whole time management thing, everyone has to understand that there's always going to be more that needs done than you're going to be able to do. That's the key. That's why prioritization, like we talked about before, is so important, because you're not going to get to absolutely everything that you could be doing. So you need to focus on the important stuff first, and just do the most important stuff, get that done. That's why the prioritization part of it is so important. But yeah, I mean, you just basically have to force your way to figure out how to not feel guilty about just punching out, and just, which I think is probably in my personal situation, it's probably why I like the short bursts of work followed by a break. So at least I can have little bits of time, where I know I've spent time just not working, just whatever it is I'm doing. It's just not, I'm not constantly working, so at least I know there's a little bit of downtime that I've spent regardless of how my day plays out.
I think one of the things that finally got me to realize that it was okay to not just, I'm a workaholic by nature. If I didn't have, something more important like my family to pull me away, I would probably just work nonstop. But after a while and a little bit of self-reflection and realizing that we're really lucky, like in this space, we get to leverage something where we can make money even though we're not working. So for example, today, it's Sunday when we're recording this podcast. We spent the early part of the day, we probably spent 5 hours out on the lake with some friends.
Nice.
And when I got home and finally did check my Amazon account, it was the second best sales day of the month. And when I first realized that I can buy into that hustle culture for a week at a time, and then realize that, okay, I'm going to go leverage a platform where all these products will sell without necessarily me having to dip my hand into it. It's okay for me to maybe take a day off and rely on that past work and then come back to it. And so I don't know. I hope more people out there can realize that, so that they don't burn themselves out, because there was a time when I allowed the stress to build up of overworking, and that causes all kinds of problems in its own right. Now, before we end the show, we should talk about some of the systems that we've brought up a few times. Do you have any favorite time management systems?
No, because I am terrible at them.
But you're good at being honest, and that's something.
Yeah. There's that you read the review in the beginning. Brian said I was an expert, and I was in my head. I'm going, oh no. Especially not this topic. No, I am. I am still figuring it out. So it's a time of experimentation. Probably the number one thing I need to do is kind of stick with it. I'm notorious for starting something and just doing it for a couple days, and not getting a big enough sample size to actually determine if that's good or not. I love, what I was really happy to see is the Pareto principle in time management, because that's one of my favorite things. I love it when that, you talked about stuff kind of coming up over and over again and being repetitive in these books, which I don't think is necessarily a bad thing. There's a whole lot of overlap and repetition in self-help, but personally, I find that as a reinforcing factor, like a lot, especially if I like the concept, like I do the Pareto principle. I'm fascinated by it. It's amazing how many places you see it. So I don't mind reading about it over and over again, because it reinforces the importance. It reinforces the aspects of it that I liked, so it helps me apply it, in my operations, if I keep hearing about it. But yeah, the Pareto principle, that's the 80-20 rule. And you can use that in time management as well. It's a lot, 80% of your production or whatever you want to take is going to come from 20% of your effort. So if you can figure out what tasks, what that 20% that you do every day or every week or whatever segment, however you want to chop it up, that produces 80% of your revenue or your profit or whatever the result is, that could be a pretty powerful time management skill, if you're able to identify those. So, that one I was excited to read about.
I don't know. In my opinion, the 80-20 principle is probably one of the most powerful principles that in anything, whether it's marketing, if it's finance, time management, business in general. It's probably something that everyone knows about, but does not really pay attention to as much as they should. I know that I'm guilty of this. I don't know off the top of my head what the 20% of the businesses that I have make up 80% of my profits. And if I would actually do a deep dive and figure that out, I could probably cut out a lot of fluff work that I don't actually need to do. Which I don't know whether that makes me stupid for not doing that, or lazy, or what, but it means something. But yeah, I don't know. It's one of my absolute favorite principles. Now, I will have to say I do like the ABCDE method. I don't do it as well as I should, but I do like to take tasks and divide them up. What you should do, what you could do, what you could delegate, and what you're never going to do. I'm not so great at taking the things off that I'm never going to do. I'm getting a little bit better at delegating. And then I think I'm pretty good at putting the tasks that need to get done near the top. If you break down my day today, the things that needed to get done were, it was a planned family day, so that needed to get done. And then I had to write a suspension for someone. And we knocked those two things, out of the park. And so I do like that the best. I've tried the quadrant system in the past, and I don't know, my brain doesn't seem to function that way very well in the quadrant system, where you split tasks into urgent, important, both, or neither. I don't know why. It's just not for me.
Yeah. And I tell you what, I'll be perfectly honest with you, I am not a fan of the Pomodoro technique.
Okay.
I don't, because I'm more into flow. And I've mentioned that before, and it's popped up a couple times in a couple different books now, to where if you're in a zone and you're productive, just keep going, go as long as you can, and if it's, I don't want to, I don't want a timer, an egg timer to dictate, when I stop a line of concentration, which I know you don't have to, you don't have to adhere to it super strictly, but I'm not a fan of that. Like, I don't, I don't want that kind of structure.
I would agree with that. I don't know. Once I quit, the job, and I no longer had a boss, I kind of threw up the middle finger to structure in general, and I prefer, let's kind of go with the flow. I did try have you ever installed the tomato timer extension?
No.
No. Okay. So, I tried the tomato timer, which is based on the Pomodoro technique, and it wasn't for me either. After reading Cal Newport's book, Deep Work, and him really kind of going into flow and things like that, I'm on the same page as you. If I'm putting together on the weeks that you don't write 5 Things Friday, I get into a flow pretty easily. I know that I'm going to do my research first, and then I'm going to go and I'm going to pick what articles I want to talk about, and then I'm going to, write the content and try to be mildly funny while also offering some real news and actionable things for people, and that kind of thing. It's easy to get in the flow, and I don't want to stop after an hour. It might take me, 90 minutes to 2 hours to write, and I can do that in one sitting. But make me pull up Inventory Lab, and you got about 15 minutes, and I need to get up and take a walk.
Yeah. Yep.
So,
and I do have a bone to pick before we move on.
Okay.
You had in the Discord, you had the pirate joke in the Shenanigans channel. And it was arbitrage, right? What do you call a pirate that sells on Amazon, right? So it's funny. Absolute crickets when I followed up with they buy stuff on sale, SAIL.
I know that was perfect.
That was high class. I mean, that is expert level and complete crickets. Not even a sympathy smiley face emoji.
Did I not give you a sympathy smiley face? I apologize.
There was nothing. The 900 people in there ghosted me completely. It was so disheartening.
Yeah. See, that was perfect comedic timing. And I will give you a pat on the back publicly here, since I didn't give you one there.
I appreciate it. I feel better already.
I'm curious how many, and we may have to do this sometime. I would imagine there are quite a few puns we could end up coming up with in the Amazon space. And that may have to be a topic for a show one day. Maybe we'll have an adult beverage or two and just riff a little bit on that.
Speaking of our lowest rated episode, we might find out how few people share our sense of humor. That's the dangerous part of
that. As usual, we do want to end the show with a quote, and we pulled a couple. Although I think the first one is going to be the one we go with, and this one is: "Take care of the minutes, and the hours will take care of themselves." And that is from I don't know, His Majesty Lord Chesterfield. I'm not even sure who Lord Chesterfield is right off the top of my head.
My first instinct was that's who you call the convenience store if you have Lord Chesterfield in a can, but I think that's somebody else.
I think so.
But don't sleep on that quote, because that is so good, and that flows into some of our favorite books on productivity. Atomic Habits, The Motivation Myth. Because there was a concept where where you forget about the goal. You can set a goal, and then you figure out the process to get there, but then you forget about the goal and you just focus on the process. So it's just do what you need one day after day, and you just kind of stack up days, and which creates a habit, and then one after another you end up achieving the goal. But these books focus on, and I love this concept, is where you focus on the process itself and actually get to enjoy the process, and it almost makes the goal irrelevant. You almost hit it, and not even notice it. So that's really good stuff there.
I think if we could package up some of what James Clear has put together, which I have a lot of quotes on my phone, that I save, and he has to be the number one most quoted person in my phone. Like, it's almost embarrassing. You would think I'm stalking the guy.
But his emails, he has that like click to tweet.
Yep.
It's like I've seen that plugin on WordPress before. His stuff is like the only ones that I've actually ever used the click to tweet function.
Oh, wow.
That's how good his stuff is.
The only reason I haven't is because I will do it on every single one, and then I worry he would block me on Twitter. But if you could take some of what James Clear puts together, and then I don't know, maybe add a little bit of the Seinfeld method to that, which I like. I really like Seinfeld's method of writing, where he talks about you just mark an X on every single day. Those two things alone, I think, would make people more successful than they ever dreamed that they would want to be. If they just realize that over a long enough time of doing the right things, you're really gonna make a huge difference. So, All right, this was a great episode. Listen, guys, if you enjoyed this episode, please make sure to drop a like wherever you're watching this. Leave us a review. They really do help us. They get a few more people interested in the show. And while I don't think we're ever going to make the top 10 list for business podcasts, we would like to maybe at least be top 10 in your hearts, and we'll appreciate that. So, Chris, thanks for joining me for another week, man. Appreciate you doing this. Always have a good time. And we'll be back next week with another episode. All right. Have a great week, everybody. Good selling. Thanks for listening to Clear the Shelf with Chris and Chris. If you enjoyed this episode, please take a screenshot on your phone and share to Facebook, Instagram, or your favorite FBA group, and be sure to tag me and let me know why you liked it and what you'd like to hear more from us in the future. Also, I'd like to give you some free gifts for listening. Head over to rabbittrailchallenge.com and repricerchallenge.com for some free courses to further your business. Thanks for listening.